Hey guys, Andrew at AED Source. Today we're going to be talking about AEDs, the regulations and liability surrounding them. Before we jump into that though, go ahead and like and subscribe to this channel. It supports us, helps keep you informed about other important and useful topics related to AEDs, whether you're looking to get one or you already have one. Alright, so regulations and liability. A lot of people, especially when they're looking at getting an AED, they're concerned about what kind of liability they're taking on. And to be honest with you, getting an AED is a pretty simple thing. It's a very simple unit and device to maintain. The problem is that people sometimes are either unaware about the regulations that there are, or they're just negligent. And so I'm going to cover that with you to make sure that whether you're looking to buy an AED or you currently have one, you're all set and you don't have to worry about that. Let me answer the first myth though. So is an AED a liability? Could I get sued because we used an AED and and somebody died and now I'm getting sued because I tried to help but I failed? Really, that's not something that's going to happen. That'll get thrown out in court. AEDs fall under Good Samaritan laws, and so as long as you were trying to do everything in your best ability, there's really no liability for you or your organization. In fact, there are times where organizations have been held liable because they didn't have an AED. So there's a case several years ago at Busch Gardens where somebody went into cardiac arrest and the person died, and the family sued for a lot of things. One of the things that they got sued for though, or that they sued Busch Gardens for, was the fact that they didn't have AEDs on the property. So in reality, not having an AED can sometimes be a bigger liability than having one, because the expectation is just like a fire extinguisher or products like that. There's just kind of becoming more and more of an expectation that an organization is going to be responsible for the people that are coming through their doors. Okay, so that's one thing. Second of all, regulations. You can buy an AED off of Amazon or any other online store, and a lot of times there's no mention about regulations. But in fact, when you get one, every state in the country, in the US, has regulations about what you need to do once you own an AED. Those regulations are going to include things like creating an emergency action plan, and then having to submit that emergency action plan to your local, a lot of times it can be a local EMS or health department, so it just depends state by state. You also need to make sure that you have people trained in CPR. And usually there's no specifics on like how many people you have to have trained, but it's just like there should be a reasonable amount in number of people. So, whether that be like 1 or 2 people per shift, or something like that. But there should be a reasonable amount of people trained during your normal working hours, that if somebody goes down, there's somebody who knows how to use the device. And then a lot of AEDs, most AEDs require that you have a prescription. And so you've got to have a physician who fills that prescription. Usually the prescriptions are good for a year, and then they have to be renewed again. And then, some states may also require that you, if there was ever an event, that you have post-event reporting. And so what that entails is you use your AED. All AEDs will have an internal computer chip that keeps track of what was done, when it was turned on, how many shocks were delivered, things like that. And you can pull that data off with a USB cable. And so sometimes you may be required to have a physician review that data, write up a report, and then submit that to the local authorities. So that's where it's critical. And then the last thing is logging your AED. So almost across the board, every state requires that you log a monthly check. And so that just means going to your AED, looking at it, make sure that it's still in good working order. There's usually some sort of an indicator light or some sort of indicator on the AED that tells you that it's in good working order, making sure your pads and batteries haven't expired, things like that, and then notating that on a log. And that can either be done on a piece of paper or on a computer system or through a program management software, which we do offer that through AED Source. But this is where, let me point out the two things, if you're worried about liability, let me point out the two things where you are going to get yourself in a bind if you have an AED, and that's going to be here on the training side and here on the logging side. So there are a lot of stories where, let's say, for example, there was a church about an hour and a half down the road from us who years ago, they bought an AED, but they never followed through and did the rest of the regulatory requirements. And somebody went into cardiac arrest one night. They were playing volleyball in the gym or basketball, something along those lines. And the person died because nobody responded. And the family ended up suing the church. And because they had an AED, but nobody was ever trained on how to use the AED. And so that was a big ordeal. So that's going to get you in trouble. You have a device, but then you never went and bothered to get training on it. That'll get you in trouble there. Logging is also going to get you in a lot of trouble. I don't have a number, but anecdotally, I'll say there's a very high percentage of AEDs out there that have expired pads and expired batteries. And there are a lot of stories, you can look them up online, where the people went to grab an AED to go use it, and it doesn't turn on because the battery's dead, because nobody ever bothered to check it on a regular basis. Now, these batteries last for years, and so that just goes to show, like, those severely neglected. When it gets to that point, yeah, you're going to probably fall under some liability, and if the family members decide they want to sue. So these two right here, you definitely don't want to be negligent on. That's the two most common areas where people usually get into trouble when they own an AED. It's not hard to keep up with this stuff. You just need to be knowledgeable and aware, and make sure that you are diligent and disciplined and responsible. So I hope that was helpful. If you're interested in getting a program management service, you can check that out, and we'll put a link in the description below. And we automate all of that for you, kind of take off some of that burden and liability. If you have any questions or feedback on what we've covered today, feel free to drop it in the comments below. We'll definitely check on those and answer them as we can. Thanks for watching. Again, this is Andrew with AED Source.